Dr. Elena Vasquez pressed her face against the reinforced viewport of Research Station Kepler 442b, watching the twin suns of the Kepler system cast their dying light across the metallic surface of the station. The archaeological dig had been going well for months. Too well, perhaps. The ancient ruins they'd uncovered beneath the planet's surface told a story that made her skin crawl. Evidence of a civilization that had vanished overnight, their cities bearing scorch marks and claw gouges that defied explanation. "Eleanor, you need to see this," called Dr. Marcus Webb from across the observation deck. His voice carried an edge that made her stomach tighten. Marcus had been studying xenolinguistics for 20 years, and she'd never heard him sound frightened. She crossed the sterile corridor, her magnetic boots clanking against the metal deck plates. The station housed 43 researchers from 7 different species, making it one of the most diverse scientific outposts in the Outer Rim. The Altarians provided the heavy equipment with their massive frames and natural strength. The Zephyrians contributed their advanced sensors and analytical capabilities. The crystalline vector offered the unique ability to interface directly with ancient technology. It should have been perfectly safe. Marcus stood hunched over a translation matrix, his pale face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the holographic display. Fragments of alien text floated in the air, slowly rearranging themselves as the computer attempted to decode their meaning. "What am I looking at?" Elena asked, though part of her already knew she didn't want to hear the answer. "Final records from the civilization below?" Marcus said, his fingers trembling as he manipulated the display. "The computer's been working on this for 6 hours. It finally cracked the linguistic patterns." He gestured to the floating symbols. "Elena, they didn't just vanish, they were hunted." The translated text began to scroll through the air in crisp white letters. "Day 1247 of the new cycle. They came in the darkness between stars. No ships. No technology we could detect. Just shadows that move wrong and sounds that shouldn't exist." The outer colonies fell silent first. Day 1251, the capital's defenses held for 3 rotations. Our plasma barriers meant nothing. Our quantum weapons passed through them like light through water. They are not bound by the laws that govern our reality. Day 1252, last transmission from the deep bunkers. If any find this record, know this truth. They hunt by fear. The more terror you feel, the stronger they become. They feed on it. They are it. And they are always hungry. Eleanor's blood ran cold. "Marcus, how old is this?" The dating puts it at roughly 2,000 years ago. He turned to face her, and she could see her own fear reflected in his eyes. "Elena, this matches the pattern from the other dead worlds we've catalogued. All of them. Same time frame, same extinction event." A soft chime echoed through the station, followed by Dr. Kethvar's synthesized voice over the intercom. The Zephyrian's translation matrix struggled with emotional context, making his words sound artificially calm. "All research personnel to stations. Long-range sensors detect multiple anomalous signatures approaching the system. Estimated arrival in 4 hours." Elena and Marcus exchanged glances before rushing to the command center. The station's brain trust had already assembled, representatives from each species clustered around the main tactical display. The holographic representation of the Kepler system showed their station as a small blue dot orbiting the 4th planet, and approaching from the void beyond the system's edge were dozens of red contacts. "Report," Elena said, taking her position as expedition leader. Dr. Kethvar's chrome-plated form turned toward her, optical sensors whirring. "The signatures are unusual. No energy emissions consistent with known propulsion systems. No mass displacement indicating conventional spacecraft. They appear to be moving through normal space but are not bound by standard physics." Commander Thexnell, the Altarian security chief, stepped forward. His massive bear-like frame dwarfed the other species present, and his deep voice rumbled through the chamber. "Our patrol ships are investigating the outer contacts. 3 vessels, armed with quantum torpedoes and particle cannons." "Commander, maybe we should," Elena began, but was cut off by a burst of static from the communications array. The voice that emerged from the speakers was barely recognizable as Altairian, distorted by interference and raw terror. "Command, this is Patrol 7. We've made visual contact with the anomalies. They're not ships. Repeat, they are not ships. They're something else entirely. They're..." The transmission devolved into screaming, then cutting static, then nothing. "Patrol 7, respond," Thexnell barked into his communicator. "Patrol 8, Patrol 9, report your status." Silence. "Doctor." Kethvar's sensors began cycling rapidly, a sign of extreme processing load. "Commander, I'm reading massive gravitational distortions throughout the system. Whatever these entities are, their mere presence is affecting local spacetime. The lights in the command center flickered, then went out entirely. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in hellish red illumination. Through the viewport, Elena could see something that made her mind rebel against what her eyes were showing her. Darkness moved through space like oil through water, flowing around the station in patterns that hurt to look at directly. It wasn't the absence of light. It was something deeper, something that seemed to devour photons and gravitational waves alike. And within that darkness, shapes moved. Massive forms that suggested anatomy but followed no biological laws Elena understood. "Emergency stations!" Thexnell roared, but his voice was nearly drowned out by the sound of reality itself groaning under the strain of whatever was approaching. The station's hull began to vibrate, a deep thrumming that seemed to resonate in Elena's bones. She could hear her colleagues from other species making sounds of distress. Clicks, whistles, subsonic rumbles that translated roughly to the same thing in every language. Absolute terror. "They're not attacking the station," Dr. Kethvar observed, his voice processing unit struggling to maintain composure. "They're surrounding it, containment pattern." Elena forced herself to think through the fear that was clouding her judgment. "They're hunters. They're corralling their prey." The main communications array suddenly blazed to life, flooding the command center with signals from across the galaxy. Distress calls from 17 different systems, all broadcasting the same message in dozens of languages. Unknown entities attacking. Conventional weapons ineffective. Please, if anyone can help. Then those signals too went silent. "Elena," Marcus whispered from his position at the tactical display. "Look at the pattern. All the systems that just went dark, they form a perfect sphere around this sector. We're in the center." The implications hit her like a physical blow. This wasn't a random attack. It was coordinated, planned. These things, whatever they were, had been systematically eliminating every spacefaring civilization in this region of the galaxy, saving the research station for last. "Why?" she whispered. "Why save us for—" Her question was answered when the darkness outside the viewport began to shift, and Elena found herself staring into something that might have been an eye. If eyes could be the size of small moons, and filled with the collected nightmares of every sentient species that had ever dreamed. When it blinked, the station's artificial gravity failed for a moment, sending everyone floating toward the ceiling before emergency systems kicked back in. "Emergency broadcast," Elena ordered, her voice somehow steady despite the cosmic horror pressing against their hull. "All frequencies maximum power." "Elena, no," Thexnell growled. "Broadcasting will only attract more of them." "Commander, they already know we're here."
She moved to the communication station with practiced efficiency.
"If we're going to die, maybe we can warn someone else." Her finger hovered over the transmission key. Around her, the research station groaned under forces that shouldn't exist. Outside, the darkness pressed closer, and Elena could swear she heard something like breathing. If breathing could echo across the vacuum of space, she pressed the key. "This is Research Station Kepler. 442 be to anyone receiving this transmission," she said, proud that her voice remained steady. "We are under attack by entities of unknown origin. Conventional weapons are ineffective. They appear to hunt in coordinated groups and are not bound by standard physical laws." The breathing sound grew louder. "These entities have systematically destroyed 17 star systems in the past 4 hours. Their method appears to be containment followed by—" She paused, watching the darkness outside shift into new, impossible configurations, followed by consumption. Something scraped against the hull. Not metal on metal, but something that suggested claws dragged across the fabric of reality itself. "If anyone receives this message, do not investigate. Do not attempt rescue operations. Run. Get as far from this sector as possible and warn—" The lights went out again, and this time the emergency power didn't return. In the absolute darkness, Elena could hear her colleagues breathing, whimpering, praying to whatever gods their species worshipped. The only illumination came from the faint glow of personal devices and the stars outside, stars that were being blotted out one by one as the darkness expanded. "Elena," Marcus whispered from somewhere in the black. "The hull breach detectors are screaming, but we're not losing atmosphere." "How is that possible?" "Because they're not breaking through the hull." Dr. Kethvar's voice came from her left, his optical sensors providing the barest hint of light. "They're coming through something else. Something that bypasses physical barriers entirely." The temperature began to drop rapidly. Elena's breath misted in the suddenly frigid air. and she could hear the station's environmental systems struggling to compensate. "There in the walls," someone whispered from across the command center. Elena couldn't tell who had spoken. Terror had reduced all voices to the same terrified whisper. A sound echoed through the station's corridors, something between a roar and a scream that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was followed by running footsteps, then more screaming, then the distinctive sound of energy weapons firing in rapid succession. "This is Security Team 2. Texnal's communicator crackled to life. Something's moving through the research sections. Whatever it is, our weapons are passing right through it, but it's..." The voice cut off in a gurgling cry. Eleanor's hands moved by memory to the emergency broadcast controls. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Research Station Kepler 442b. We are experiencing massive casualties from unknown entities. They're inside the station. They're in the walls, they're in the vents. God help us, they're everywhere." The scratching sound against the hull grew louder, more insistent. Elena realized with growing horror that it wasn't random. It was rhythmic, purposeful. They were writing something. Dr. Kethvar's optical sensors suddenly flared to life, casting harsh white light throughout the command center. "Elena, external cameras are showing." His voice processing unit cut off entirely, replaced by a sound Elena had never heard from a Zephyrian before, something like electronic screaming. She turned to where his light was pointing and saw, carved into the station's outer hull in letters that glowed with their own malevolent energy, a single word in perfect galactic standard. "Next, Elena." Marcus grabbed her arm. "We have to get to the escape pods." She looked around the command center. Half their colleagues were gone. When they'd left, Elena couldn't say. The remaining few huddled together, clutching whatever weapons or tools they could find, though they all knew such things would be useless. "The pods won't matter," she said quietly. "You saw what happened to our patrol ships. These things don't want us to escape. They want us to know what's coming." As if summoned by her words, the darkness outside the viewport began to shift and coalesce, forming shapes that suggested geometry but followed no mathematical laws Elena recognized. And in the center of those impossible configurations, something that might have been a face turned its attention toward the command center. When it spoke, its voice came from inside Elena's head, bypassing her ears entirely and speaking directly to the fear centers of her brain.
"Your terror feeds us. Your despair nourishes us."
"We have consumed galaxies of screaming voices, and yours will join a chorus that echoes through the void between stars." Elena's hands shook as she activated the broadcast one final time. "If anyone can hear this," she whispered, "they hunt in darkness, they fear nothing, and they're coming for you. Next." The last thing she saw before the darkness claimed the station entirely was a small indicator light on the communications panel, a steady green glow that meant her message was being transmitted across the galaxy on all frequencies. Somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, her words were racing toward distant worlds at the speed of light, carrying with them a warning that would reach Earth's solar system in exactly 47 hours. But Earth was already listening. Colonel Sarah Chen stood in the dimly lit communications center of Lunar Base Alpha, watching the real-time Galactic Threat Assessment update on the main tactical display. The holographic map showed the outer rim sectors going dark one by one, like candles being snuffed out by an invisible wind. Each red X represented another star system that had gone silent in the past 6 hours. "Ma'am," Sergeant Rodriguez called from his station, "we're receiving multiple distress calls on all frequencies. Computer's having trouble processing the volume." Sarah moved to stand behind the sergeant. Her withered hands clasped behind her back. At 45, she'd seen 3 alien contact wars, 2 corporate insurrections, and the Titan mining incident that had almost started a system-wide conflict. Nothing in her military experience had prepared her for this. "Play the clearest transmission," she ordered. The speakers crackled to life with Dr. Elena Vasquez's final message. "If anyone can hear this, they hunt in darkness, they fear nothing, and they're coming for you next." The transmission ended in static, but the silence in the communications center was deafening. Sarah could hear her staff breathing, could sense the tension radiating from every console. These were hardened Marines and naval personnel, veterans of conflicts across the solar system, but she could see fear in their eyes. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Hayes spoke up from the intelligence station. "We're receiving similar transmissions from 17 different sectors. Pattern analysis suggests coordinated attacks by unknown entities. Conventional weapons appear ineffective." Sarah studied the tactical display. The attacks were moving inward from the galactic rim in a perfect spiral pattern, consuming everything in their path. At their current rate of advance, they would reach human space in approximately 72 hours. Rodriguez, get me Admiral Morrison on priority channel. Hayes, I want everything we have on those transmission sources. Energy signatures, ship movements, whatever's left. Colonel! Came a new voice from across the room. Doctor. James Harrison, the base's xenobiologist, approached with a tablet in his hands and genuine terror in his eyes. I've been analyzing the linguistic patterns in these distress calls. Man, every species is describing the same thing. Entities that exist outside normal physics, that feed on fear itself, that move through space without ships.
Sarah took the tablet and scrolled through the data.
Species from dozens of different evolutionary backgrounds with completely different sensory organs and psychological frameworks, all describing identical experiences. That was either impossible coincidence or, they're telling the truth, she murmured. Ma'am, every species sees them the same way because they are the same way. Sarah handed the tablet back to Dr. Harrison. Whatever these things are, they're not bound by the physical laws that would make them appear different to different observers. The main communication array suddenly blazed to life with an incoming transmission. Admiral Morrison's weathered face appeared on the holographic display, his expression grim. Colonel Chen, I assume you've been monitoring the Outer Rim situation.
Yes, sir.
What are your orders? Morrison paused, and Sarah could see him weighing his words carefully. Sarah, I'm going to ask you something that might sound insane. Do you believe we're looking at a genuine threat to human civilization? Sarah glanced around the communications center, at the faces of her staff, at the tactical display showing system after system going dark. Sir, based on the evidence, I believe we're looking at a threat to all sentient life in this galaxy. Morrison nodded slowly. Then I'm authorizing Operation Lighthouse. Sarah felt her blood turn to ice. Operation Lighthouse was humanity's ultimate contingency plan. A military response designed for threats so severe that the survival of the human species was in question. It had never been activated, not even during the worst moments of the corporate wars. Sir, are you certain? Lighthouse protocols. Colonel, we have 47 minutes before those things reach the edge of our monitoring stations. Every other species in this galaxy has either been wiped out or has fled to the galactic core. Earth is the only remaining military power in this sector. Morrison's expression was stern. If we don't make a stand here, there might not be anywhere left to run to. The weight of that statement settled over the communications center like a funeral shroud. Sarah could hear Dr. Harrison's tablet beeping softly as it updated with new transmission data. More star systems going dark. Admiral, requesting permission to review the full tactical assessment. Granted. Harrison, are you reading this? The xenobiologist looked up from his tablet, startled to be addressed directly by Earth's senior military commander. Yes, sir. Doctor, in your professional opinion, are we dealing with a conventional military threat? Harrison's hands shook slightly as he consulted his data. Admiral, based on the reports from 43 different species across 17 star systems, these entities display capabilities that are, well, they're impossible. They move through solid matter, they're immune to all known weapons, they manipulate local space-time, and they appear to exist partially outside our dimensional framework. Translation, Doctor. Sir, we're not fighting an alien species. We're fighting something that operates on principles our science doesn't even recognize. Admiral Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Colonel Chen, what's your assessment of our tactical situation? Sarah moved to the tactical display, studying the pattern of attacks. Sir, assuming conventional strategic thinking applies at all, which is a big assumption, they're conducting a systematic extermination campaign. They're not trying to conquer territory or resources. They're eliminating all sentient life in this region of the galaxy. Why save us for last? Unknown, sir. Possible explanations include, we're the most isolated target, making us harder to reach. We're the least developed, making us less of a perceived threat. Or, Sarah paused, considering a possibility that made her stomach turn. Or, we're the main course, sir. Every other species was an appetizer. The communication channel crackled with interference, and for a moment Admiral Morrison's image flickered. When it stabilized, his expression had hardened into something Sarah recognized from their worst combat operations. Colonel, I'm transmitting the Lighthouse authorization codes now. You have full tactical command of all military assets in the Sol system and authority to implement any strategy you deem necessary for species survival. Sarah felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a lead blanket. Sir, what are our available assets? Everything, Sarah. Every ship, every marine, every weapon we've ever built or dreamed of building. The research boys in the deep labs are transferring all classified projects to your command. If it can kill, it's yours. Lieutenant Commander Hayes looked up from his station.
Colonel, incoming transmission on the general distress frequency. Put it through.
Dr. Elena Vasquez's voice filled the communication center one more time.
This is Research Station Kepler.
2B, to anyone receiving this transmission. We are under attack by entities of unknown origin. If anyone receives this message, do not investigate. Do not attempt rescue operations. Run. The transmission cut off in static, and Sarah found herself staring at the tactical display. 17 star systems. Trillions of sentient beings. All gone in a matter of hours. Rodriguez, she said quietly, open a channel on all military frequencies. Channel open, ma'am. Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that what she said next would either save humanity or be remembered as the last words of human civilization. This is Colonel Sarah Chen, United Earth Marine Corps, broadcasting to all military personnel on Emergency Authorization Lighthouse 1. We have confirmed reports of hostile entities conducting systematic extermination campaigns in the Outer Rim sectors. These entities pose an existential threat to all sentient life in this galaxy. She paused, looking around the communications center at the faces of her staff. These people would follow her orders without question, even into certain death. The weight of that trust was almost unbearable. As of this moment, Earth is officially at war with an unknown enemy that operates outside conventional physics and has already eliminated 17 star systems. All leave is cancelled. All non-essential personnel are to report to emergency stations. All military assets are to prepare for immediate deployment. She could hear similar announcements echoing through the base's corridors, could imagine the same words being broadcast to military installations across the solar system. Dr. Harrison, she continued, you're now attached to my tactical staff. I need everything you can tell me about these entities. Weaknesses, behavioral patterns, anything that might give us an edge. Colonel, with respect, the reports indicate these things are essentially invulnerable.
Doctor. Sarah's voice cut through his protest like a blade.
Every predator has weaknesses. Every hunter can become prey. Our job is to figure out how. Admiral Morrison's image flickered back to life on the display. Sarah, I'm transmitting the deep black files now. Everything humanity has built in secret over the past 50 years. Experimental weapons, theoretical technologies, things we hoped we'd never have to use. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The deep black projects were Earth's most carefully guarded secrets. Weapons and technologies so dangerous or morally questionable that they were kept hidden even from most military personnel.
Sir, are you talking about the Prometheus protocols?
Everything, Colonel. Prometheus, Pandora, Damocles, every doomsday option we've ever developed.
If we're going to make a stand, we're going to do it with everything humanity has ever dreamed of building. The tactical display updated, showing new information as the classified files downloaded. Sarah's eyes widened as she read the technical specifications. Jesus! Lieutenant Commander Hayes whispered from his station. Colonel, some of this stuff, if we actually deploy these weapons. Hayes, right now I'm less concerned with the long-term consequences and more concerned with making sure there is a long-term. Sarah studied the data streaming across her tablet. Rodriguez, how long until those things reach our outer monitoring stations? 38 minutes, ma'am. Sarah nodded, her mind already calculating tactical possibilities. Admiral, requesting permission to implement Prometheus Protocol 7. Morrison's face went pale. Sarah, that's a planet killer. We've never tested it outside of computer simulations. Sir, we're not fighting a conventional enemy. Maybe it's time to stop using conventional solutions. Granted. God help us all, but granted. Sarah turned to address the communications center. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to find out if humanity deserves its reputation for being too stupid to know when we're beaten. Hayes, start calculating firing solutions for the outer system defense grid. Rodriguez, get me Captain Martinez on the UES Valkyrie. I want our fastest ship ready for immediate deployment.
Ma'am, Dr. Harrison spoke up. There's something else.
I've been analyzing the timestamps on the distress calls. The attacks are accelerating. Whatever these things are, they're getting stronger as they consume more systems. Sarah felt a cold knot form in her stomach. How much stronger? The first attacks took hours to complete. The most recent ones are being finished in minutes. The implications were staggering. If the entities were growing more powerful with each victory, then every moment they delayed gave their enemy a greater advantage. Change of plans, Sarah announced. We're not waiting for them to come to us. Admiral Morrison's eyebrow shot up. Sarah, what are you thinking? Sir, every military manual ever written says the same thing about superior enemies. You don't let them choose the time and place of engagement. You force them to fight on your terms. You're talking about taking the fight to them. I'm talking about showing these things something they've apparently never encountered before. A species that doesn't run away from monsters in the dark. Sarah moved to the main tactical display, her fingers flying over the controls as she began plotting attack vectors and deployment patterns. Rodriguez, patch me through to every ship in the fleet. Hayes, I want firing solutions for everything from the asteroid belt to the edge of the system. Harrison, start working on any theoretical weaknesses these entities might have. The communication center burst into activity as her staff began implementing orders that would commit humanity to a war against cosmic forces beyond their understanding. Admiral, Sarah said, looking directly into Morrison's eyes. I'm going to need one more thing. Name it. Sir, I need you to authorize a general broadcast on all galactic frequencies. If there are any survivors out there, any species that manage to escape, they need to know that someone is willing to fight. Morrison paused. Sarah, if we broadcast our intentions, we'll be telling these entities exactly where we are and what we're planning. Sir, I don't think they care about our plans, but there might be other species out there who've given up hope. Maybe if they see someone fighting back, you're talking about starting a galactic resistance movement. I'm talking about reminding the galaxy that predators only win when their prey gives up fighting. Morrison nodded slowly. Do it. Sarah straightened, feeling the weight of not just human survival, but the survival of every remaining sentient being in the galaxy. Rodriguez, open channels on all frequencies, maximum power. Channels open, ma'am. Sarah Chen, a human colonel from a species that had barely achieved interstellar travel, looked into the camera that would broadcast her words across the galaxy. This is Colonel Sarah Chen, United Earth Marine Corps. We have received your distress calls. We understand the threat you're facing. To any survivors listening to this broadcast, you are not alone, and you are not abandoned. She paused, thinking of the billions of humans going about their daily lives, unaware that their species was about to either save the galaxy or die trying. We don't know what these entities are or where they come from. We don't care. They've made the mistake of threatening innocent people, and that makes this personal. The tactical display showed the approaching darkness, now only 26 minutes from their outer defenses. To the things hunting in the dark, you've never encountered humans before. We're the species that looked at the vast emptiness of space and decided to explore it. We're the ones who saw impossible odds and decided to fight anyway. We're the species that turns toward the sound of screaming in the dark. Sarah smiled grimly at the camera. Consider this your formal introduction to humanity. We hear you're looking for a fight. Well, congratulations. You found one. Captain Elena Rodriguez felt the deck of the US Valkyrie vibrate beneath her boots as the experimental fold-space drive prepared to tear a hole in reality itself. Around her, the bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, their faces grim but determined. They all knew what they were flying into, and they'd all volunteered anyway. Captain, Lieutenant Chen called from the navigation station. Fold-space calculations complete. We're ready to jump directly into the Kepler system. Elena studied the tactical display floating above the captain's chair. The Kepler system showed as a red zone on every sensor array the last known position of research station Kepler 442b before it went dark 6 hours ago. Intelligence suggested whatever had destroyed the station was still there, feeding or resting or doing whatever cosmic horrors did between meals. Commander Santos, Elena called to her first officer. Status report on our special cargo. Santos consulted his tablet, his weathered face reflecting decades of combat experience. The Prometheus device is secured in Launch Bay 3. Doctor, Peterson and his team are monitoring it around the clock. Ma'am, I have to ask one more time. Are we certain this is wise? That thing is powerful enough to crack a planet. Elena looked around the bridge at her crew. They were all volunteers from humanity's best units, handpicked for this mission because they'd proven they could function under impossible stress. But even these hardened veterans looked nervous when discussing their primary weapon. "Commander, we're not fighting a conventional enemy. Everything in the Outer Rim sectors was destroyed by entities that laugh at our best weapons. Maybe it's time we stop playing by conventional rules." The communication array crackled to life, and Colonel Chen's voice filled the bridge. "Valkyrie, this is Lunar Control. Are you ready for insertion?" "Colonel, this is Captain Rodriguez. Ship is ready, crew is ready, and our special package is armed and awaiting deployment." "Understood, Captain. Remember, your primary mission is intelligence gathering. We need to know what we're dealing with before we commit the full fleet. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." Elena almost smiled at that. Don't engage unless necessary. They were flying directly into the jaws of something that had devoured 17 star systems, carrying a weapon that could sterilize entire worlds. The definition of necessary was about to become very flexible. Acknowledged, Lunar Control. One last thing, Colonel. If we don't make it back, make sure Admiral Morrison knows these things can be hurt. Everything can be hurt if you hit it hard enough. Copy that, Valkyrie. Good hunting. The channel closed, leaving the bridge in relative silence except for the hum of the engines and the soft beeping of monitoring systems. Elena could feel the tension radiating from her crew. Not fear, exactly, but the sharp focus that came before combat. "All stations report ready for fold space transition," Lieutenant Chen announced. "Engineering, how's our power situation?" Chief Engineer Wallace's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, we're running the reactors at 110%. Not recommended for extended periods, but we'll have plenty of juice for whatever you need." Elena settled into the captain's chair and activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. In 30 seconds, we're going to make the shortest and most dangerous jump in human history. We're heading directly into the unknown to gather intelligence on an enemy that has destroyed civilizations far more advanced than ours." She paused, looking around the bridge at faces she'd served with for years. "I want everyone to understand. This mission is voluntary in name only. The truth is, if these entities reach Earth, there won't be anywhere left to run. We're not just fighting for humanity. We're fighting for every remaining sentient being in this galaxy." The fold space drive began to whine as exotic particles built up in the reaction chamber. Some of you might be wondering why us, why now, why this ship? The answer is simple. Because we're human, because somebody has to, and because the Valkyrie is the meanest, toughest, most heavily armed ship humanity has ever built. Elena smiled grimly. "Let's go show the galaxy what humans do when something threatens our friends." "Fold space drive at full power," Chen reported. "Execute jump." Reality twisted around the Valkyrie like a pretzel made of starlight and nightmares. For a split second that felt like hours, Elena could see through the barriers between dimensions, could glimpse the underlying structure of space-time itself. And in that glimpse, she saw something that made her blood freeze. Vast shapes moving through higher dimensions. Things so large that entire galaxies were just food particles floating in their hunting grounds. Then normal space reasserted itself with a thunderclap that shook the ship from bow to stern, and they were in the Kepler system.
Jesus Christ! Someone whispered from the sensor station.
Elena looked at the main display and immediately understood the reaction. The Kepler system was wrong. Not destroyed, not damaged. Wrong on a fundamental level that hurt to look at directly. The twin suns still burned, but their light was bent, twisted into patterns that cast shadows in directions that shouldn't exist. The planets remained in orbit, but they moved along paths that formed geometric shapes no natural gravity well could create. And hanging in space between the fourth and fifth planets, like a tumor in the fabric of reality itself, was a structure that defied every law of physics Elena knew. "Sensor report," she ordered, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Captain, the readings don't make sense," Lieutenant Murphy called from the science station. "That structure is approximately the size of Earth's moon, but it's not reflecting light, it's absorbing it, including forms of radiation that shouldn't be able to be absorbed." "What about the research station?" "No debris, ma'am. No wreckage at all. It's like the station was never here." Elena studied the impossible structure hanging in space before them. It pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost organic, and she could swear she saw shapes moving within its dark mass, things that suggested limbs and eyes and mouths arranged in configurations that made her head hurt. "Commander Santos, launch a probe. I want detailed scans of that thing." "Probe away, Captain." They watched the small reconnaissance drone streak across the display toward the alien structure. It covered half the distance before something reached out from the darkness, not a tentacle or an appendage, but a manipulation of space itself that grabbed the probe and pulled it into the structure's mass. Probe telemetry lost, Murphy reported unnecessarily. Elena was about to order a retreat when the communication array suddenly blazed to life. The voice that emerged from the speakers was Dr. Elena Vasquez from the research station, but wrong, distorted, as if it were being filtered through something that didn't quite understand how human vocal cords worked. "Welcome, humans. We have been waiting for you." The entire bridge crew turned to stare at the communication station as if it had suddenly sprouted fangs. "We consumed the knowledge of the species you call Vasquez. We learned much about your kind from her final thoughts. You are interesting." Eleanor forced herself to respond. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the United Earthship Valkyrie. Return Dr. Vasquez and her team immediately." The sound that came through the speakers might have been laughter, if laughter could echo through dimensions and carry the screams of consumed worlds. "Captain Rodriguez, the flesh called Vasquez, has been incorporated into our collective consciousness. Her knowledge, her memories, her terror, all of it feeds our understanding of your species." Elena felt rage building in her chest, hot and pure. "Then you know we're not going to just roll over and die. Indeed. Your species is unique among those we have encountered. Others flee or despair when confronted with inevitable extinction. Humans become angry. You prepare for war against superior forces. It is entertaining." Santos leaned over to whisper in Elena's ear, "Captain, we should get out of here. Report back to Fleet Command." But Elena was staring at the alien structure, thinking about Dr. Vasquez and her research team, thinking about the 17 star systems that had gone dark, thinking about Colonel Chen's words about hitting things hard enough. "Dr. Peterson," she called over the intercom, "how quickly can we prepare the Prometheus device for deployment?" "Captain, are you serious? We're supposed to be gathering intelligence, not—" "Doctor, how quickly?" 15 minutes for full preparation, ma'am." Elena smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Do it, Captain," Santos said urgently. "We don't know what that weapon will do to something like this. We could make the situation worse." "Commander, the situation is already as bad as it can get. These things have eaten 17 civilizations. They're going to keep eating until there's nothing left." Elena turned to address the entire bridge. "We came here to gather intelligence. Well, here's what I've learned. These things think we're entertainment. They think human anger is amusing." She stood up, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders like armor. "Let's show them what human anger can really accomplish." The alien structure pulsed brighter, and Elena could swear she felt something pressing against the edges of her consciousness, a vast, malevolent intelligence trying to read her thoughts. "Captain Rodriguez, you cannot harm us with your primitive weapons. We exist partially outside your dimensional framework. We have consumed the knowledge of species millions of years more advanced than yours." "Maybe," Elena said, activating the ship's external communications array, "but you've never fought humans before." She gestured to Lieutenant Chen. "Take us in closer. I want to be close enough to count teeth when we light this thing up." The Valkyrie began moving toward the alien structure, and Elena could feel reality warping around them as they approached. The ship's artificial gravity flickered, the lights dimmed, and for a moment she could swear she heard voices whispering in languages that predated human civilization. "Captain, Doctor." Peterson's voice crackled over the intercom. "The Prometheus device is armed and ready. But I have to warn you, at this range, we'll be caught in the explosion ourselves." Elena looked around the bridge at her crew. These people had followed her across the solar system and into certain death. They deserved honesty. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to deploy an experimental weapon against a target that exists outside normal physics. There's a good chance this will kill us all." She paused, watching her crew's faces. "Anyone who wants to transfer to an escape pod has 30 seconds to do so. No questions asked, no judgment rendered." Elena counted the seconds off in her head. Nobody moved. "Captain." Chief Wallace's voice came over the intercom, speaking for the entire crew. "We didn't come this far to run away now. Light it up." Elena felt a surge of pride that almost brought tears to her eyes. These were her people, her crew, her family. And they were about to either save the galaxy or die trying. Dr. Foos. "Peterson, deploy the Prometheus device on my mark." The alien structure pulsed again, brighter this time, and Elena could feel that malevolent presence pressing harder against her thoughts. But now there was something different, a note of uncertainty, almost concern. Humans, your actions are illogical. You cannot harm us. You will only ensure your own destruction. Elena smiled grimly. You know what? You're probably right. But here's the thing about humans. We've never been particularly logical. She looked at the tactical display, watching the distance markers tick down as they approached optimal firing range. We're the species that saw an impossible ocean and decided to cross it in wooden boats. We looked at the sky and decided to fly. We saw the vast emptiness of space and thought it looked like a good neighborhood. The alien structure was looming larger on the display now, close enough that Elena could make out details in its impossible architecture. Structures that folded through dimensions she couldn't name, populated by shapes that hurt to perceive directly. And when something threatens our friends, our family, our species, we don't calculate odds. We don't assess probability matrices. We grab the biggest gun we can find and we start shooting. Elena raised her hand, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on her like a physical force. Dr. Gia. Love. Peterson, fire. The Prometheus device launched from the Valkyrie's cargo bay like a miniature star, its exotic matter warhead crackling with energies that had never existed naturally in this universe. Elena watched it streak toward the alien structure, carrying with it humanity's first real strike against the forces that had consumed the galaxy. For a moment, nothing happened. The device simply vanished into the structure's dark mass, swallowed by whatever impossible physics governed the entity's existence. Then, the universe screamed. Light erupted from the alien structure, not normal light, but something that burned through every spectrum simultaneously, something that carried information directly into Elena's brain without bothering with her eyes. She could see/feel/know the entity's pain, its surprise, its rage as exotic matter tore through its extra-dimensional form like a chainsaw through tissue paper. The Valkyrie's shields flared and died as exotic radiation washed over them. Hull plating began to buckle under gravitational waves that fluctuated between positive and negative infinity. But the ship held together, held by human engineering and Elena's sheer bloody-minded refusal to give up. "Damage report!" she shouted over the cacophony of alarms. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Life support failing in sections 12 through 16. But we're alive, Captain. The son of a bitch is alive! Elena looked at the display and felt her heart leap. The alien structure was damaged. Huge sections of its impossible architecture were simply gone, vaporized or banished to whatever dimension they'd originally come from. And more importantly, it was no longer pulsing with that confident, malevolent energy. Instead, for the first time since humanity had encountered these entities, the thing in space before them appeared to be in pain. "Captain," Lieutenant Murphy called from the sensor station, "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from the structure. Whatever we hit it with, it's having trouble maintaining cohesion." Elena opened the external communications array one more time. "This is Captain Rodriguez, to the thing that used to be in control here. You said humans were entertaining. Are you still entertained?" The response came not through the speakers, but directly into her mind, a voice like galaxies colliding, filled with pain and rage and something Elena had never heard from one of these entities before: uncertainty.
Impossible.
"We are beyond your physical laws. We cannot be harmed by three-dimensional matter." "Yeah, well," Elena said aloud, knowing the entity could hear her thoughts. "That was four-dimensional matter. Turns out when you fight humans, the rules change." The alien structure pulsed weakly, and Elena could sense something like fear radiating from it. "You do not understand what you have done. We are connected across space and time. Our brethren will come. They will bring darkness that will consume your sun itself." Elena looked around the bridge at her crew, battered, bloodied, but victorious. They'd done something no other species in the galaxy had managed. They'd hurt one of these things. "Let them come," she said quietly. "We'll be waiting." Admiral Jack Morrison stood in the war room deep beneath Lunar Base Alpha, surrounded by holographic displays showing the tactical situation across 3 sectors of the galaxy. The images were not encouraging. Where Captain Rodriguez had wounded one entity in the Kepler system, dozens more were now converging on human space like antibodies responding to an infection. "Sir," General Patricia Hayes called from the Strategic Planning Station, "latest intelligence from our Deep Space Monitoring Station shows 47 distinct entities moving toward the Sol system. They're coming from every direction simultaneously." Morrison studied the tactical display, watching the red contacts creep closer to humanity's home system. Each dot represented something capable of devouring entire star systems, and they were all focused on Earth. Time to contact? 18 hours for the fastest-moving group, sir. But Admiral, there's something else. They're not moving randomly. They're coordinating their approach to arrive simultaneously from multiple vectors. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Coordination implied intelligence, planning, strategy. Bees weren't just cosmic predators following instinct. They were conducting a military operation. Colonel Chen, he called to the communication station. Any word from the Valkyrie? Sarah Chen looked up from her console, her face drawn with exhaustion and stress. Captain Rodriguez reported mission success 6 hours ago. The entity in Kepler's system was damaged but not destroyed. She's maintaining observation position and providing tactical data. What kind of tactical data, sir? The wounded entity is broadcasting some kind of signal, apparently calling for reinforcements. But more importantly, Captain Rodriguez confirms the Prometheus weapon was effective. These things can be heard. Morrison nodded grimly. One wounded entity was calling for help, and the galaxy was responding with nearly 50 of its siblings. Humanity had picked a fight with forces beyond their comprehension, and now those forces were coming to finish what humans had started. General Hayes, what's our current military readiness? All fleet assets are deployed in defensive positions throughout the solar system. We've got the Mars Defense Grid online, asteroid belt mining platforms converted to weapons stations, and every ship from destroyers to garbage scows armed with whatever exotic weapons our research division could produce in the last 12 hours. Morrison almost smiled at that. Trust humans to turn garbage haulers into warships when faced with extinction. How many Prometheus devices do we have? 17 functional units, sir. Dr. Peterson's team has been working around the clock, but exotic matter synthesis is a complex process. 17 weapons against 47 entities. Morrison rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of impossible odds. What about our allies, sir? Colonel Chen looked confused by the question. The other species, the survivors from the Outer Rim attacks. Are any of them willing to fight? Chen consulted her communications logs. Admiral, we're receiving scattered transmissions from refugee fleets throughout the galaxy. Most are in full retreat toward the galactic core. However, she paused, checking her data again. Sir, we are getting some interesting responses to our broadcast yesterday. What kind of responses? Species that thought they were the last survivors reporting their positions. Military units from destroyed civilizations asking for coordinates to join our defense fleet. And sir, there's something else. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Go on. The Zephyrian Empire dispatched a battle fleet, what's left of it, 12 ships, mostly damaged, but they're equipped with reality manipulation technology. ETA 6 hours. The Altarian Republic sent their remaining heavy assault units, 4 Dreadnought-class vessels and a full marine complement. They say they owe humanity a debt for refusing to abandon them. Morrison felt something stirring in his chest that might have been hope. Anyone else? Sir, we're getting responses from 37 different species. Most don't have much left. A few ships, some weapons, scattered military units. But they're coming. Morrison stared at the tactical display, watching as small blue dots began to appear on the periphery. Always converging on human space from across the galaxy. Survivors who had given up hope until they heard a message that someone was willing to fight. Colonel, how many ships total? 218 vessels, sir. Mixed technologies, mixed capabilities, but they're all armed and ready for combat. Morrison's grin was sharp as a blade. Then let's give these cosmic horrors a proper introduction to galactic civilization. He activated the command-wide communication system. All station commanders, this is Admiral Morrison. Operation Lighthouse is now entering Phase 2. We are no longer conducting a purely defensive action. As of this moment, we are the command center for a galactic resistance movement. He could feel the energy change in the war room as staff officers realized the implications. Earth wasn't just fighting for human survival. They were leading a coalition of every remaining military force in the galaxy. General Hayes, I want every allied ship integrated into our command structure. Different species, different technologies, but one unified command. Colonel Chen, establish communication protocols with all ally commanders. If we're doing this, we're doing it together. The war room burst into activity as humanity prepared to coordinate the first multi-species military operation in galactic history. Morrison watched the displays update as Allied ships reported in, each vessel representing a species that had refused to give up hope. Admiral, Dr. Harrison approached from the scientific analysis station. I've been studying the data from Captain Rodriguez. The wounded entity is exhibiting some interesting behaviors, such as, it's trying to heal itself, sir, but the exotic matter damage is interfering with whatever process allows these entities to exist across multiple dimensions. It's essentially trapped in our reality until it can repair the dimensional breach. Morrison considered the implications. Doctor, are you saying we found a way to force these things to fight on our terms? Potentially, sir. If we can damage enough of them with Prometheus weapons, we can force them to remain in normal space where conventional weapons might be effective. Might be? Sir, even trapped in our dimension, these entities are still orders of magnitude more powerful than anything we've encountered. But at least they'd be bound by physics we understand. Morrison nodded. It wasn't much of an advantage, but in a war against cosmic horrors, he'd take whatever edge he could get. Admiral, Colonel Chen called urgently. Priority transmission from Captain Rodriguez. Put her through. Elena Rodriguez's face appeared on the main display, her image flickering with interference from the exotic energies still radiating from the wounded entity. Admiral, the entity here is beginning some kind of transformation. It's pulling in mass from the surrounding planets, incorporating it into its structure. Sir, I think it's trying to anchor itself more firmly in our reality. Morrison felt his blood chill. Captain, what's your assessment? Sir, if this thing succeeds in fully materializing in normal space, it's going to be the size of a small moon, and completely immune to our exotic weapons. It'll be too stable in our dimension for the Prometheus devices to affect. How long do we have? Based on current rate of mass absorption, maybe 6 hours before the transformation is complete. Morrison looked around the war room. 6 hours before one entity became unstoppable. 18 hours before 47 more entities reached Earth. And somewhere in between, he had to coordinate a defense involving dozens of alien species, using technologies humanity barely understood. Captain Rodriguez, maintain observation and prepare to retreat if necessary.
We're going to need your tactical data.
Understood, sir. But, Admiral, there's something else. The entity has been trying to communicate with me directly. Not through the ship's systems, but through some kind of telepathic contact. Morrison's attention sharpened. What kind of communication? It's offering a deal, sir. It says if humanity surrenders voluntarily, it will ensure our extinction is swift and painless. It claims we've caused significant damage to their collective consciousness, and they're willing to negotiate to prevent further losses. Morrison's laugh was cold and humorless. Captain, did you respond to this generous offer? Elena Rodriguez's smile was fierce. I told it where it could stick its deal, sir, in language that would make a Marine sergeant proud. Good woman, hold position and keep reporting. We'll have reinforcements to you soon. The transmission cut off, leaving Morrison staring at a tactical situation that would have been hopeless if humans were anything approaching reasonable. General Hayes, deploy Prometheus devices to escort positions with our allied fleets. When those entities arrive, I want every ship in the galaxy ready to hit them with exotic weapons simultaneously. Sir, we only have 17 devices, against 47 entities. General, we don't need to destroy them all. We just need to damage enough of them to force them into normal space. Once they're bound by conventional physics, our allies might have weapons that can hurt them. Morrison moved to the main tactical display, beginning to plot defensive positions. Colonel Chen, send a message to all allied commanders. Tell them we're about to attempt something that's never been tried before. A coordinated multi-species assault against extra-dimensional entities. Tell them the odds are terrible and they'll probably die. Sir? But also tell them that for the first time in galactic history, we have a real chance to hurt these things. And if we succeed, we might just save every remaining civilization in the galaxy. Morrison looked around the war room at faces filled with grim determination. These people understood the stakes. Earth was no longer fighting just for human survival. They were fighting for the concept of civilization itself. Colonel Chen, prepare a broadcast on all galactic frequencies. I want every surviving being in this galaxy to hear this. Channel open, sir. Morrison looked into the camera, knowing his words would reach across the vast emptiness of space to refugee fleets, hidden colonies, and scattered survivors who thought they were alone in the dark. This is Admiral Jack Morrison, United Earth Defense Forces, broadcasting to all survivors throughout the galaxy. I know you're afraid. I know you've lost everything. I know you think this fight is hopeless. He paused, thinking of Captain Rodriguez facing down a cosmic horror with nothing but human courage and exotic weapons. But here's what I want you to know. You are not alone. We are not giving up. And in 18 hours, we're going to show these entities what happens when they threaten innocent people. The tactical display showed Allied ships converging on the Sol system from every direction, a growing constellation of hope in the darkness. For too long, these entities have hunted us in isolation, picking off civilizations one by one. Today, that ends. All. Today, every remaining military force in the galaxy stands together. Morrison's voice hardened into something that carried the authority of every human who had ever refused to surrender in the face of impossible odds. We are the descendants of species that crawled out of primordial oceans and decided to reach for the stars. We are the inheritors of civilizations that built wonders and dreamed impossible dreams. And we will not go quietly into whatever darkness these entities represent. He looked directly into the camera, speaking not just to aliens across the galaxy, but to the cosmic horrors approaching Earth. To the entities currently approaching our world, you made a mistake when you decided to hunt thinking beings. You made a bigger mistake when you gave us time to prepare. But your greatest mistake was assuming that fear would paralyze us. Morrison smiled, and it was the expression of a predator who had just realized he wasn't prey after all. Fear doesn't paralyze us. It pisses us off. And you're about to learn why that's the most dangerous emotion in the galaxy. The final battle for galactic civilization began at exactly 0347 hours, Sol Standard Time, when long-range sensors detected the first wave of entities dropping out of whatever impossible space they used for travel. Colonel Sarah Chen watched from Lunar Base's command center as reality itself seemed to bend and twist around the outer edges of the solar system. Contact, Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the sensor station. 47 distinct signatures approaching from multiple vectors. They're not trying to hide, ma'am. Sarah studied the tactical display showing the solar system's defenses. 218 Allied ships formed a defensive sphere around Earth, their mixed technologies creating a patchwork of different energy signatures on the display. Zephyrian reality manipulators floated alongside Altairian dreadnoughts, while smaller vessels from dozens of species filled the gaps between major formations. Admiral Morrison, she called over the command frequency. Enemy contacts confirmed. They're coming straight at us. Morrison's voice crackled back through interference that seemed to bend around the edges of normal space. Understood, Colonel. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. Remember the plan. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and don't give them time to adapt. Sarah activated the fleet-wide communication array. All Prometheus weapons, prepare for synchronized deployment on my mark. She could see the alien formations on her display now. Dark shapes that hurt to look at directly, moving through space with impossible grace. Each entity was the size of a small moon, their forms shifting and flowing as they existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Colonel, Doctor, Harrison called from his analysis station. I'm reading massive reality distortions across the entire system. These entities are affecting local space-time just by being here. Sarah nodded grimly. She could feel it too, a wrongness in the air, a sense that the universe itself was holding its breath. Fleet status report, she ordered. All Allied vessels report ready, ma'am. Prometheus weapons armed and targeted. Conventional weapons standing by. Sarah looked at the tactical display one more time, counting the odds. 47 cosmic horrors against less than 300 ships and 17 exotic weapons. By any reasonable calculation, they were about to be slaughtered. Good thing humans had never been particularly reasonable. All ships, this is Colonel Chen. Today we're fighting for more than just survival. We're fighting for the right of thinking beings to exist in this universe. Make every shot count. She raised her hand, feeling the weight of galactic civilization resting on her shoulders. Prometheus weapons, fire. 17 miniature suns erupted from the Allied fleet, each carrying enough exotic matter to destabilize local reality. Sarah watched them streak across the display toward their targets, humanity's answer to forces that had devoured entire galaxies. The entities didn't try to evade. They simply absorbed the incoming fire, just as they had absorbed every conventional weapon ever used against them. And then the universe screamed. The first Prometheus device struck its target dead center, and exotic matter tore through extra-dimensional flesh like a hot knife through butter. The entity convulsed, its impossible form flickering between dimensions as it struggled to maintain cohesion across multiple realities. 16 more impacts followed in rapid succession. Exotic matter warheads detonated throughout the attacking formation, each explosion tearing holes in the fabric of space-time itself. Sarah watched in amazement as entities that had seemed invulnerable moments before writhed in apparent agony. Damage assessment, she called. 11 entities show significant structural damage, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported. They're flickering in and out of normal space. Looks like they can't maintain dimensional stability. What about the others? 36 entities unaffected, ma'am, and they look angry. Sarah could see what he meant. The undamaged entities were pulsing with malevolent energy, their forms growing larger and more solid as they dropped fully into normal space. Whatever these things were, they just learned that humanity could hurt them, and they were responding accordingly. All ships, Phase 2. Conventional weapons, maximum firepower. The Allied fleet opened up with every weapon they possessed. Altarian quantum cannons fired alongside Zephyrian reality disruptors. Human plasma torpedoes streaked past crystalline vector energy beams. The space between Earth and the attacking entities became a wall of destructive force. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, the entities began to take damage from conventional weapons. "My God, Dr. Cryosurfing," Harrison whispered from his station. "It's working. The exotic matter damage forced them into our reality. They're bound by normal physics now." Sarah allowed herself a moment of hope as she watched the tactical display. Several of the damaged entities were breaking apart under the sustained bombardment, their extra-dimensional forms unable to maintain cohesion while locked in normal space. Then the entities began to fight back. Space itself became a weapon as the surviving entities manipulated local reality. Sarah watched in horror as an entire squadron of Altarian ships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but edited out of reality as if they had never been built. "All ships evasive maneuvers," she called, but her words were cut off as something that might have been a gravitational wave passed through lunar base, causing everything to briefly exist in 17 different places simultaneously. "Colonel!" Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice was barely recognizable through the reality distortions. "The entities are adapting. They're figuring out how to use conventional physics as weapons." Sarah could see it happening on the tactical display. The entities that had been damaged were learning, adapting, turning humanity's own physics against them. They began to generate black holes as easily as other species fired lasers, manipulated time dilation to age enemy ships to scrap metal in seconds, and twisted space-time into configurations that turned friendly fire into impossible geometry. "Admiral Morrison," Sarah called over the command frequency, "we need the reserve fleet, now." "Negative, Colonel. Reserve fleet is 15 minutes out. You have to hold them." Sarah looked at the tactical display. They'd already lost 30 ships, and the entities were barely scratched. "In 15 minutes, there wouldn't be anything left to save. All ships, this is Colonel Chen. I'm authorizing Emergency Protocol 7. The fleet command frequency fell silent. Emergency Protocol 7 was humanity's final contingency. Every ship in the fleet would simultaneously overload their reactors and ram the nearest entity. It would destroy the entire Allied fleet, but it might take enough entities with them to give Earth a fighting chance. "Colonel," came a voice over the communication array. "Captain Rodriguez from the Valkyrie, still observing the transformed entity in the Kepler system. I've got an idea. It's crazy, but it might work." "I'm listening, Captain. These things exist across multiple dimensions, right? That's how they've been nearly invulnerable. But the exotic matter damage has forced some of them into normal space." Sarah was beginning to see where this was going. "Go on. What if we forced them all into normal space? Not just the damaged ones, but every entity in the system. Captain, we don't have enough exotic weapons to damage them all." "We don't need to damage them, Colonel. We just need to make normal space more attractive than extra-dimensional space." Sarah felt her heart stop as she understood what Rodriguez was suggesting. "Captain, you're talking about destabilizing local space-time throughout the entire solar system." "Yes, ma'am. If we detonate every remaining nuclear weapon in Earth's arsenal simultaneously, we can create enough gravitational distortion to effectively lock these entities into our reality." "Captain, that would also lock us into unstable space-time. The entire system could collapse into a black hole. Or it could give us the 30 seconds we need to kill them all with conventional weapons while they're trapped in normal space." Sarah looked at the tactical display. They were down to 200 ships against 36 entities that were learning to use physics as weapons. Emergency Protocol 7 would get maybe half of them, but Rodriguez's plan, insane as it was, might get them all. "Captain, implement your plan. All ships, prepare for emergency nuclear deployment. We're about to do something spectacularly stupid." Sarah opened a channel to Earth's military command. "This is Colonel Chen to Terrestrial Defense Command. I'm requesting immediate deployment of every nuclear weapon in Earth's arsenal." "Colonel, that's our entire strategic nuclear reserve." "Commander, we're fighting for the survival of every thinking being in the galaxy. Deploy the weapons." "Understood." Nuclear deployment in 30 seconds. Sarah watched the countdown timer on her display while staying around her. The Allied fleet fought desperately against entities that were rewriting the laws of physics in real time. Ships disappeared into pocket dimensions, were aged to dust by accelerated time fields, or simply stopped existing as the entities learned to manipulate quantum probability. All ships, this is Colonel Chen. In 20 seconds, Earth is going to detonate approximately 4,000 nuclear weapons simultaneously. This will destabilize local space-time and force all entities into normal reality. You will have exactly 30 seconds to destroy them before the gravitational distortions tear the system apart. The communication frequency buzzed with responses in dozens of alien languages, all translating roughly to the same thing: acknowledgement of orders that were either brilliant or insane. 10 seconds to detonation. Sarah looked around the command center at her staff. People who had followed her through the impossible and were about to either save the galaxy or die in the attempt. 5 seconds. The tactical display showed the entities moving closer to Earth, their forms crackling with energies that had never existed in normal space. Nuclear deployment now. 4,000 nuclear weapons detonated simultaneously throughout the solar system, each positioned to create maximum gravitational distortion. The combined explosion was visible from neighboring star systems, a burst of light and energy that briefly outshone the sun itself. And then reality grabbed every extra-dimensional entity in the system and slammed them into normal space like insects hitting a windshield. Now, all ships, everything you've got. The Allied fleet unleashed hell. Weapons that had been useless minutes before suddenly tore through entities that were trapped in three-dimensional space. Quantum cannons designed to crack planets began carving chunks out of cosmic horrors. Reality disruptors that could bend space-time ripped through entities that could no longer phase into other dimensions. Sarah watched the tactical display as entity after entity began to break apart under concentrated fire. They were fighting back, but they were limited to conventional physics now, and 200 ships with advanced weapons were more than a match for even cosmic horrors when those horrors couldn't cheat. "Colonel, Dr. Harrison called from his station. "Gravitational distortions increasing. The system can't hold this configuration much longer." "How much longer do we have?" "Maybe 20 seconds before the solar system collapses into a black hole." Sarah looked at the tactical display. 30 entities down, 6 remaining. 20 seconds to finish them off before physics killed everyone in the solar system. "All ships, concentrate fire on remaining targets. Everything you have, right now." The final 6 entities died under concentrated bombardment from every surviving ship in the fleet, their impossible forms finally succumbing to weapons they could no longer phase through. The last entity disintegrated just as Dr. Harrison began counting down the final seconds before gravitational collapse. "Nuclear fields dissipating," he reported. "Gravitational distortions returning to normal. System integrity holding." Sarah slumped in her chair, feeling exhaustion wash over her like a physical weight. "Fleet status report. 137 ships remaining, ma'am. Heavy casualties, but we're alive." "Entity status?" "All contacts destroyed, Colonel. System is clear." Sarah activated the fleet-wide communication array. "All ships, this is Colonel Chen. Congratulations. You just accomplished something no one in galactic history has ever done. You fought cosmic horrors and won." The communication frequency exploded with cheers, battle cries, and expressions of celebration in dozens of alien languages. For the first time in months, the galaxy had good news. "Admiral Morrison," Sarah called over the command frequency. "System is secure. Enemy forces eliminated." "Outstanding work, Colonel. What's the status of Captain Rodriguez?" Sarah checked her communications logs. "Sir, the Val.